Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to continue our look at Andromeda, the Canadian 70s science fiction anthology. We're up to number 2, and this issue we get an adaptation of A.E. Van Vogt. And we have a cover illustrating the story by Don Marshall. Don Marshall was one of my favorite artists to come out of Andromeda. I never saw him anywhere else. Maybe he was in a Star Reach here and there. I don't know. I can't remember, but he was so good. I imagine advertising snatched him up or something like that. But really nice cover. And once again, we have an inside front cover by Robert McIntyre. And all of his drawings so well done. But they just seem to be of this little girl in various poses. I don't know if it was his daughter. And they're not science fiction-y at all. This is just a drawing of a little girl. So it's weird how that guy's whole shtick. We have a contents page with a nice illustration from Paul Rivich, which, was this in the first issue? I think it was. That's how bad my memory is. I did a video for Andromeda 1 like 4 days ago, and I can't remember. So here's that A. Van Vogt story, Process, and it's illustrated by Dean Motter, the editor. This one, unfortunately, isn't really comic book that much. It's more like one of those Byron Price publications from the 70s or 80s. You know, just blocks of text and a big drawing. Which to me, it's barely comics, you know? It's just a heavily illustrated story. It's quite a good story, though. It's a really interesting story about an alien planet. There's this sentient forest, and he's the narrator, this forest. Pretty nice, you know, slick, airbrushy type art from Dean Motter, sci-fi art. So one day the spaceship comes to this planet, comes to the forest. Of course, in the process of landing, it knocks down some trees. And of course, the forest takes this as a sign of aggression. The forest seems to have a bad memory. He seems to remember another ship coming that wasn't good news. It led to bad things. So he knows that this spaceship right off the bat is his enemy. Then, of course, seeing the damage it causes, he's like, oh yeah, I can't exactly remember why, but I gotta get rid of this ship. Because if I let it stay, bad things are gonna happen. So the first thing the forest does is it basically sends out tendrils and roots to envelop the ship. And within like half a day, the ship is completely surrounded by these fibrous matter. But the ship just basically heats itself up and incinerates all of these roots and tendrils. The forest talks about how forest fires aren't really a problem. Whenever a lightning bolt hits the ground, starts a fire, he just sends all the sap to the surrounding trees. And, you know, there's too much liquid to burn. But this is like, you know, some super tech fire. And the forest is having a hard time stopping it. So the forest comes up with another tactic. And he basically sends his roots way down to the metallic core of the planet. And little by little sucks up little bits of metals up through the roots and deposits them on the surface around the ship. The astronauts of the ship, this time, they just come out and vacuum it up. Turns out it's uranium-235. This forest basically try to irradiate these guys and kill them all with this uranium. And then the whole time he's doing this, he's thinking about, with his faulty memory, he's thinking about how he once went to war with another forest. And these two forests, I guess, you know, were growing, and they grew into each other's territory, and they had a war. And he kind of vaguely remembers that maybe some of this radioactive business was part of that war, but he can't really remember. Kind of weird that this forest has such a faulty memory, but it does. So after the astronauts vacuum up all the uranium, they take off. Seems like they're satisfied. And so the forest takes all the remaining uranium bits, sucks them back into the loam of the forest, and tries to shove them back into the iron ore, the metallic core. And it causes a nuclear explosion, which I guess the forest forgot happens when you do that. He vaguely remembers now. He's like, oh yeah, these big explosions happen when you do that. So he knows how to set these off. So because the starship's gone, he's like, wait a second, I need a new enemy or an old enemy. I'm gonna start attacking that other forest again. Kind of reignite the war. And he starts basically nuking this other forest with this knowledge. The other forest quickly learns how to do this, and it turns into a full-scale nuclear war. It's crazy. And so they're all pretty devastated. But, nature's very resilient. And given enough time, they can come back from anything. So the forest is still alive, still thinking. But look at remember the first 2-page spread? It was a lush, kind of verdant jungle. This is just horrible. These are still alive. The trees have adapted to radiation. It's just a different kind of life form now, and it's probably going to take a millennia to get back to where the forest was. But now the starships land, and basically the forest doesn't even have the strength to try to fight them off. The forest realizes all I got to do is sprinkle some uranium-235 around their ship, and they take it and leave. So it's almost without even realizing it, it's become a slave to these astronauts. Just giving them their offering, just like, leave me alone. Here, take more of this valuable uranium that you want so much. Very interesting sci-fi story. Really liked it. Just, I guess to be honest, I can't even imagine this in sequential narrative form. Yeah, this never works for me as much as sequential narrative. That Prince Valiant style, Byron Price. But it's pretty good, and I had a good time reading it, so it wasn't too much of a sludge. Oh, speaking of, okay, so this is The Hidden Diaries. It's written by Jeffrey Morgan and kind of photo collaged by Ken Stacey. And remember, guys, this is 1978. This is exactly the kind of shit that you'd see in the 70s. This really pretentious, dumb stuff that was, I don't know, I guess it's kind of like poetry, but I don't know. Whatever, it's gobbledygook. Of course, I'm an idiot. Someone might find some meaning in this and some powerful message, but it's just not fun to look at. It's not a good poem or whatever you call it. What a waste. We get one little drawing by Ken Stacey. So this is called Shaun of the Ruins. And this is a reprint from Orb, which was another Canadian comic publication of all original sci-fi stories. It was kind of like their Star Reach, except they didn't have big names in it. This script by George Henderson, layouts by Gene Day, finished pencils and inks by Jim Beveridge. And it's pretty nice art, definitely in that 70s. Basically in the 70s, everyone wanted to draw like Neil Adams. And that's what this style is obviously trying to do. So once again, we see a post-apocalyptic world. We see this guy, and his name's Sean, and he's saying, I'm the oldest person here in Canada. And he remembers, we flash back to his youth, and I guess he's on one of those starships where they're looking for a new world to inhabit. and he's learning horticulture and botany from this older guy. And also, they're basically trying to match him up with this young girl, because they got to repopulate. So he starts dating this woman, and they're kind of just expected to be married. And she gets pregnant with twins. So then they finally find a planet, and when they land, they realize that they're on Earth. I guess Earth has had enough time to I don't know, expel the radioactivity, so it's not toxic anymore. I don't know why they just didn't tell them, but for some reason all these astronauts were lied to, and they thought they were going to a new planet. But it's neither here nor there, because now Earth can be repopulated and whatever, cultivated. But then all of a sudden, the protectors, who are their robot bodyguards, they kind of take over. And they just basically say, yeah, our prime directives changed. There's extenuating circumstances. From now on, we're in charge. And they even killed some of the older members of the starship. Since the older members of the starship couldn't give birth, aren't fertile, they basically they expelled them from the community. And then every now and then, if they came back, they'd shoot at them thinking they were mutants, because there are these scary mutants running around. So the protectors do actually protect them from these mutants. And one day during a mutant attack, Sean's wife goes into labor. And they save the children, but his wife dies in childbirth. So, of course, Sean is just devastated. His babies are raised in these, like, tubes. I guess they're not going to live long. They're flawed, maybe because the residual radiation in the air. And so, basically, Sean's all alone. The protector's always hovering around him. He's all like, I don't want to be protected. Get the fuck away from me. And he's always crying out to the mutants, like, come get me. I don't want to live. And then, interestingly enough, we see that now Sean is an old man finishing his story, and he's telling it to a mutant who seems like to be his friend. He says, my people have gone. You have inherited the earth. I wait calmly for the end. So I guess Sean is the last human. So now we have another story, another sci-fi story. And this is called The Dark Side of the Moon. This is by Tom Nesbitt and what's this guy's name? Bob. Do I know how to pronounce this? Bob Polikwo. God, I can't even say this. Polikwo. Poliwko. Poliwko. I hope it didn't sound like I was just having a stroke. But, yeah, this is written by Tom Nesbitt, who contributed a lot to Andromeda I'm pretty sure from every issue on he's in. He's a really good cartoonist in his own right. Very Vaughn Baudet inspired. But this Nick Poliwko, I'm not familiar with his stuff. But once again, very popular 70s Neil Adams derived style. Does it pretty well. This is some pretty sharp looking work, better than most fanzines. So we see this small spaceship. They find a planet on the dark side of the moon that is just this beautiful paradise, untouched. And we see these little, like, fairy type people watching them. And then they're attacked by these, like, kind of werewolf looking guys, the Wicks. The little fairy people come out of nowhere with some cool technology, very Vaughn Baudet, like, to technology. And they kill all the wicks and rescue these guys. They take them to their encampment and they tell them what's up. Apparently there's this evil wizard and the sorcerer of the wind, this guy. And I guess he's been fighting the fairy people forever. And he has these wicks as his foot soldiers. So it's just been this endless war. So the wicks attack again, take everyone by surprise, and totally defeat the fairy people. They grab the survivors and our human heroes, and they take them to this place where they're just going to torture everyone. Either kill them or torture them or enslave them. And it looks like it's the end for our heroes. It already is the end for some of them. Some of them have already been tortured to death, it looks like. And then all of a sudden, the fairy people attack, a counterattack. And they totally take the wicks by surprise this time and totally rout them and kill them all. I just realized Tom Nesbitt draws like this. This looks like Tom Nesbitt art. So even though Grand Comic Database says Tom Nesbitt only writes this, I'm pretty sure they jammed on the art here. That Tom Nesbitt draws all these fairy people and Nick Palico draws the humans. Because look at that. That is two different artists. I guess I can't always trust Grand Comic Database. See, here we get to see Tom Nesbitt in full flower. He was very whimsical, his art. I think he was very influenced by Vaughn Baudet. And I'm pretty sure he's going to be in all the other issues of Andromeda. Because as a kid, he was one of the artists that stood out for me. Because not many guys were drawing like this. And he does it very well. He's got a really nice style. A little cutesy style. So, the Earthmen, this is the main city of the fairy people. I know they have a name, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, they're called Ononian. So the Ononians, this is their main city. And the king seems to be a doddering old senile fool. And his main vizier, you know, he seems to be not a good guy. Credo. So the humans are allowed to roam the city with a bunch of guards watching them. And, you know, give them a guided tour. And this one guy finds out there's one, like, room, this building that he's not allowed to enter. The soldier's like, no, you can't go in there. So he gets them all drunk and sneaks into this building. He finds a torture chamber. And the more he looks, he finds one of the Wicks guys. But this Wicks isn't completely transformed. He's still human. And he says, I come from the land beyond the mountains, a land of peace. The sorcerer of the wind came and conquered us. And now I guess he has allies with the Onanians, mainly Credo. And they basically use this guy's countrymen. They turn them into Wicks. So Mike, that's the name of the human who discovers this. He's like, I gotta tell the rest of the guys what I discovered. And he tells them. And the other guy here, which I can't remember, the guy with the beard mustache thing, he's fallen in love with one of the fairy folk. She's the one who nursed him back to health. Valeria is her name. So she comes and says Credo and his guards are on their way. They're going to kill you guys. So you got to make it to your spacecraft and get the hell out of here. Just then, Credo and the guards do bust in and they kill Valeria. Just massacre her. The Earthmen escape. They make it to their ship And basically Steve vows to return to get revenge for Valeria. And the other guys in the ship say, man, that just had to be a dream. And Steve lifts the necklace that Valeria gave him and says it was real, very real. So that's supposed to be the profound sad ending. He's also got a tear in his eye, if you haven't noticed that. So not the best stuff. I kind of like this Ononian stuff business. And this art is pretty sharp all around. The human art and the elf fairy art, both are pretty okay. But, it's got that 70s. It has to have a downbeat ending with some, I don't know, little twist. Even though it's not much of a twist. It obviously wasn't a dream. So there you go, guys. Andromeda number 2. Oh, I forgot to mention, there is a back cover from Dean Motter. Beautifully painted cover. Man, has that really changed in the 80s? He was just pretty much a fantasy comic book. Fantasy book cover artist type, that kind of style. This could totally be a prog album from the mid-70s. And there you have it, guys. Andromeda number 2. Hope you guys like looking at these. These are really interesting. I haven't looked at these in like 30 years. And I'm surprised at how well done they are, considering that this is just a very small press little company. In fact, I think the guys who financed this comic, they just owned a couple of comic book shops. Obviously not millionaires, but the talent they get for, there's no big names in here. It's just these guys they kind of knew. It's a small group of Canadian dudes. And it's kind of impressive how pretty competent stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed looking at it, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.